There is a place with no wind, no rain, no sound. The temperature swings from 127 degrees Celsius to negative 173, sometimes within hours. And yet, right now, there are teams of scientists, engineers, and government agencies who believe humans will live there permanently within your lifetime, not visit. Live. They are already designing the roads, the power grids, the water systems. They have chosen specific locations on its surface. They have tested the building materials. Some of the structures are already being built on Earth, waiting to be shipped. This is not a dream from the 1960s. This is an active, funded, multi-government operation happening right now. And the most remarkable part? The biggest obstacle isn't the technology. It isn't the money. It's something much simpler. Something they still haven't fully solved. In 2022, NASA released a document that most people never read. It was 72 pages long. Inside, engineers had mapped out something they called the Lunar Architecture Framework. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a construction timeline. The document described permanent human habitation on the Moon, not by 2100, not by 2075, but beginning as early as 2040. And that's within the next 15 years. The location they chose wasn't random. It was a crater near the Moon's south pole, Shackleton Crater, a place where the sun never fully sets on the rim, and the inside stays in permanent darkness. Scientists had been watching this crater for decades, and what they found there changed everything. In 2009, a NASA probe deliberately crashed into the crater's floor. The impact sent a cloud of debris rising above the surface. When researchers analyzed that cloud, they found something they had hoped for but never confirmed. Water ice, billions of tons of it, locked in the frozen shadow, untouched for possibly 3 billion years. That water wasn't just for drinking. Split it into hydrogen and oxygen, and you have rocket fuel. Suddenly, the Moon wasn't just a destination. It was a refueling station, a base of operations, a doorway to everything beyond. But here's what that document also contained. Buried in the final pages, in careful technical language, a single line that one senior engineer later described as the problem we don't talk about publicly. Nobody explained what that problem was. That single line in the document read as follows: long-duration human exposure to the lunar surface environment remains an unsolved biological challenge. 13 words that carried the weight of decades of research, because here is what those engineers already knew. The Moon is trying to kill you, not dramatically, not instantly, but slowly, quietly, and in ways that medicine still hasn't fully answered. It starts with the dust. Lunar regolith, the fine powder covering the Moon's surface, isn't like sand on Earth. On Earth, wind and water were particles smooth over millions of years. The Moon has neither. Every particle is sharp, jagged, and microscopic. It gets into everything: suits, equipment, air filters, and when it enters the lungs, it doesn't leave. Apollo astronauts noticed it after just a few hours on the surface. Harrison Schmitt, a geologist who walked on the Moon in 1972, developed what he described as lunar hay fever within hours of dust entering the habitat module. His symptoms cleared when he left, but a permanent settler wouldn't be leaving. Researchers at Stony Brook University later tested lunar dust simulant on human lung cells in a laboratory. Within 24 hours, up to 90% of those cells were dead. That was in a controlled lab setting. Nobody has tested what years of exposure does to a living man. But that wasn't even the problem the engineers were most concerned about. There was something else happening to the human body on the Moon. Something that doesn't show symptoms for months. Something that by the time you notice it, has already done its damage. The Moon has no magnetic field. Earth does, a massive invisible shield generated by its molten iron core, deflecting the constant stream of charged particles the Sun throws at everything in the solar system. Remove that shield, and radiation hits you directly. Not the kind from an X-ray machine, the kind that penetrates concrete. NASA's own data from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter confirmed that radiation levels on the Moon's surface are 200 times higher than what humans experience on Earth. A person living on the Moon would absorb in a single day what a radiology technician is legally allowed to absorb in an entire year. Over months, it silently attacks bone marrow. It alters DNA. It dramatically raises the risk of certain cancers, not immediately, but with a quiet certainty that researchers describe as a debt that eventually gets collected. And this is where the timeline gets complicated. Engineers at the European Space Agency began running simulations in 2021, placing theoretical settlers on the lunar surface and calculating cumulative radiation exposure over a 10-year habitation period. The results were not published in full. A senior ESA researcher, speaking at a conference in Cologne that same year, said only this: the numbers were not comfortable. He didn't elaborate. But here is the twist that most people miss entirely. Scientists already have a solution to the radiation problem. It's not experimental. It's not theoretical. It exists right now, and it's sitting on the moon's surface, already there, already waiting. The answer was never the technology. The answer was the location itself, and what they found beneath the surface changed the entire plan. In 2013, Japan's Selene lunar orbiter detected something unusual beneath the moon's surface near the Marius Hills region. A hole, not a crater from an impact, a vertical shaft, perfectly cylindrical, dropping straight down into the moon's interior. It was approximately 50 meters wide and at least 50 meters deep. Scientists had seen similar features on Mars, but never confirmed one like this on the moon. They called it a skylight, the entrance to something much larger underneath. When NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter passed over and bounced radar signals into that shaft, the data revealed what was below. A tunnel, stretching for potentially kilometers in every direction, formed billions of years ago when ancient lava rivers carved pathways through the moon's interior and then drained away, leaving hollow tubes of solid rock behind. Lava tubes, the same structures exist on Earth, in Iceland, in Hawaii, in the Canary Islands. But on the moon, without erosion, without earthquakes of significant scale, they had survived completely intact for 3 billion years. The walls were estimated to be between 2 and 20 meters thick, enough to block cosmic radiation almost entirely, enough to maintain a stable temperature around minus 20 degrees Celsius, unchanging, predictable, controllable. Engineers immediately understood what they were looking at. Ready-made shelter. No construction required. Just seal the entrance, pressurize the interior, and you have a radiation-proof, temperature-stable habitat large enough to house thousands of people. But then a geologist at the University of Bologna ran the structural calculations, and what he found inside those numbers made the entire team go quiet. The tubes weren't just big enough for an outpost. They were big enough for a city. Dr. Antonio Genova at the University of Bologna didn't set out to redesign humanity's future. He was running structural stress calculations on lunar lava tube data. Standard academic work. But when the numbers came back, he checked them 3 times. Then he called a colleague. The tubes beneath the moon's surface weren't just structurally stable. They were extraordinarily stable, far more than any equivalent structure on Earth. Because the moon's gravity is 1/6 of Earth's. The rock ceiling of a lava tube that would collapse under its own weight on Earth stays perfectly intact on the moon. His calculations suggested that a single lunar lava tube could be wide enough and tall enough to contain an entire city the size of Philadelphia. Sealed, pressurized, protected. A self-contained world beneath the surface of another world. And here is where everything converges. Water ice at the South Pole for drinking and fuel. Lava tubes for radiation-proof shelter, solar power on the crater rim running continuously, regolith that can be 3D printed into building materials using technology already tested at facilities in Cologne and Houston. Every piece of the puzzle already exists. None of it requires a scientific breakthrough that hasn't happened yet. It only requires will, coordination, and time. In 2024, NASA, ESA, and JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, signed a joint framework agreement specifically referencing permanent lunar habitation infrastructure, not exploration, habitation. The plan is already in motion. The question was never whether humans could live on the moon. The question, the one engineers sit with quietly, is what kind of society gets built there, and who decides the rules. If this story made you think differently about what's coming, there's more where this came from. Subscribing takes 1 second. The next story might be the one that stays with you longest.